Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hacking with Friends. Today we have our special guest James on, aka Michael 3, I believe, and he's here to show us yet another operating system in our series of hacker operating systems. James, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a fan-suggested one, actually, isn't it?
I think it may have been.
It definitely was, because where did you hear of Void Linux?
It was either fan suggested or it was on that weird list on Twitter that you found.
Oh, yeah. So I think that we had a couple people that were requesting Void Linux, and we went and looked a little bit more about it, and we were actually kind of intrigued because there's a lot of kind of like half-baked, like Debian-based operating systems that are not very well thought out. Like they either have a specific use case in mind or they're kind of difficult to work with. But Void Linux is not that. It is something completely different. And we've tried out some very different operating systems before. You guys might recall the time that we tried out Temple OS, our current operating system we're running now, and also the time that we tried out like OpenBSD and some of these other operating systems, which got us yelled at by people that use that operating system. Remember that, James?
Yeah, that was really interesting.
So, continuing down that line, we really want to try out some more of these operating systems that maybe you've never heard of, but are unique or interesting in their own way. So today we want to try out Void Linux. And James, maybe I'll let you talk a little bit about what Void Linux is and why you might actually want to run it or consider it.
Right. So the first thing that we should bring up about Void is that like you have the sort of parent operating systems of Linux in like Arch, Debian, and those have based off them loads of other operating systems like Manjaro for Arch and Ubuntu and countless others for Debian. Void is a separate branch, so it's not like based on one of the other operating systems we've talked about before, which was interesting to me because I'd never heard of it before we looked at it through this. And the other interesting thing about Void that's pretty unique is that it is not using systemd. Like pretty much every other operating system we've looked at, I think. Temple OS obviously doesn't. I think all the other ones do, though. So that's a pretty interesting thing.
Wait, so for people who don't know what that is or are just perusing operating systems, what is systemd?
Now, that is a question that I'm not very well equipped to answer. But
all right, go on.
I think it's like a collection of sort of things that you would usually run in a Linux system. And some people call it bloat and stuff like that. So some people don't want to use it. So people like that may be interested in using something like Void. And the other thing that we should bring up about Void is that it's a rolling release system like Arch. So that's also interesting.
Okay, so from the Wikipedia page, just to get people who are new to this on the same page, systemd is a software suite that provides an array of system components for Linux operating systems. Its main aim is to unify service configuration and behavior across Linux distribution. Systemd's primary component is a system and service manager, an init style, used to bootstrap user space and manage user processes. It also provides replacements for various daemons and utilities, including logging, device management, login management, network connection management, and event logging. So like this just seems like something where if you don't include it, you have to do a lot of stuff from scratch. And to finish it out, the name systemd adheres to the Unix convention of naming daemons by appending the letter D. It also plays on the term systemd, which refers to a person's ability to adapt quickly and improvise to solve problems. Hilarious. Nice one, Linux people. So I guess this is something that then is pretty important for people who want to be able to make their Linux distribution have uniformity across different platforms. So if you want to be able to have something be installed roughly the same and depend on some of the same services, it certainly helps to have some sort of universal baseline that programs can depend on in order to just run on a Linux computer.
Yeah, so one sort of basic example that I just ran into while setting everything up is that when you start like a service, so for instance, when you start the DHCP service on Void to get your networking working in my case, usually you would say sort of systemctl start whatever, but in this case it was not systemctl because that's a part of systemd. So instead you have to use their own system managing service called runit or something like that. I don't know. We'll get into that a bit later when we go through setting everything up. But yes, so a lot of things are a little different that you may not be how you're used to, essentially.
So what is the sum of these differences? Like, what is this operating system useful for, or what kinds of people are the fans behind this operating system, or people that might get something out of it?
So a lot of people don't like systemd because if you have this sort of big chunky thing that's consistent across all operating systems, and there's a lot to it that you may not understand, some people don't like that. So as it's run on most other operating systems, yeah, so I'm looking at a list now, it's run on Arch, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, Ubuntu. So basically everything runs systemd out of the box. So if you want something that doesn't run systemd out of the box, that's probably the most unique thing that I have seen that would make you want to run this. Maybe I'm missing something, but that's what comes to mind immediately.
So system D haters.
Systemd haters, yes.
Cool. So do
And
you think
if
that
you
this
like a
has
rolling
any like
release,
privacy or like hardening benefits?
you could argue it decreases the attack surface, but at that point you're still running like stuff to run these sort of services. So I'm not actually sure about if that would decrease your attack surface because you have to replace it. But maybe. But honestly, I think it's just a different operating system. That's it's cool to look at. I don't know enough about the arguments for and against systemd to really comment on the security benefits of that, but it's meant as a general purpose operating system, so it's not strictly aimed at security professionals. But we can see what's on their package manager later
Yeah,
and
sounds
see what we
good.
can install.
Yeah, and it also seems like I don't know, when it comes to usability and stuff, like this is just designed to have a different take on system management. It's not, and if there is a security benefit here, it's not because they chose these things because it's more secure necessarily. I could be wrong, but I think it's more like a practical use case for using this alternative like system. So again, really cool, but the security benefits here might be more from obscurity, which, as everyone knows, is probably not the best thing to really count on to keep you safe.
Sure, and we could be saying something completely wrong there because
I don't
I don't know
know.
a whole
It
lot
doesn't have
about
basic
the
security
system.
packages, and like I haven't seen security as a focus in any of the documentation I've read. So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting operating system. Has some benefits. Doesn't include some things that some people might not want to include in their operating system. So, it's still a really cool project.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So, shall we start talking about how you would actually run this and download it?
Yeah, that sounds
So,
good.
right, let me zoom in here. And then, so on the left, you can select your architecture. So if you're running ARM i686, is that, I don't even know what that is actually.
What
Is
the
that
hell
32 bit or
is
something?
Yeah,
Um,
I love like how confusing the documentation for some of the like most people are like, I have a Windows computer. Which one do I download? And then it's just like, oh, right, okay. Well, now I have to figure out which platform I'm using.
this is
But
a standard architecture. I just can't remember exactly what it is, what it
I
means
know
right
it's
now.
just funny that like
But
Windows users gonna be like, ARM, that sounds good, and they'll download it and be like, well, this isn't working. Like like there's just like I don't know a lot of confusion here. I think for people that are just getting started.
yeah. So on the right, then after you selected, so most people are going to be on x86-64, so that's
Right.
64-bit processors. Root, I think, is just a terminal interface, from my understanding. Enlightenment is a desktop environment that I had never actually heard of before, but that's what I've been testing with, so that's what we're going to use today. Cinnamon, LXD, LXQT, Maton, XFCE. These are the only two that I really recognize, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Now I know what those are. That's just like a desktop like setup. But like, what in the absolute hell are like all the other ones? I love the documentation on this, by the way. If I was a beginner, I would be so much more confused than I already am from like the download page of like the Raspberry Pi Foundation occasionally, or like Kali Linux. Like, this is like a whole new level of being confusing in your naming.
This is going to be the hardest install process that we've gone through. It's definitely manageable because the documentation is actually pretty good. So if you just read through it carefully, you can get through it. But it's not the easiest OS to install.
Right, and there's certainly no like beginner start here sign. It's just like, you know what you're doing. Jump in there, champ.
Well, I mean, we can should look at the documentation quickly. And yeah, okay, so there is a bit more of an explanation
Installer
if you go
images.
through.
I'm sorry, the installer image section is one paragraph, and it looks like it doesn't have any, like, I don't know. Some of my pain points are not addressed by this by this at all.
But yeah, so you get a nice comparison of what's going on down here. So they do have some nice information. But yeah,
All
that's
right,
really
all right, all
helpful.
right. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, this seems like a very well documented project, just not for beginners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You need to be comfortable with reading through things,
Yeah.
basically. But again, so today we're just going to be using the Enlightenment one. So I just downloaded the live image here, and then after that, we can just open up our Rufus, and you can plug in. I'm not going to get it out right now because my front panel USBs are all plugged in because we're recording. But normally you would select your USB drive, leave everything default, hit start, and then select DD mode to write the bootable media, and then you can have a USB stick that you can boot off of your device. The reason we're not doing this in a virtual machine is because when I tried doing that, I was having some really weird issues where everything would just freeze up on me. And I tried loads of different desktop environments, so I don't know if that's my setup specifically, but be aware that's a problem that you may run into if you try to run this on a VM.
Interesting. So you're going to be running this directly off of a USB stick instead of running it virtualized like the rest of the operating systems we've been doing?
Yes, well, most of the rest of the operating systems we looked at.
Okay,
So,
cool. So that's definitely worth noting for people that have been following along with us before, that this is going to involve a different process just because in our testing, James found that it was, let's just say, not straightforward to get this working in a virtual machine the way that we did with the other operating systems.
yeah, exactly. So, you're going to get a black screen here for a second, but if I switch over to what will be the other machine, and I start this up, yeah, you still can't see anything, but I'm going into my boot menu right now. Why can't you see anything? Oh, there, you can see something, but
Yeah.
the size is all messed up.
Cool, yeah.
So I'm going into my boot menu. I'm selecting my USB drive and hitting enter. And then you get two options here. So I don't want to boot into RAM, so I'm just selecting the first option. And in a minute, we should boot into the live environment. So getting into a live environment is actually pretty straightforward. It's the installation process that becomes a little more complicated to work through.
Is this fully live, or is it live with persistence?
This should be... I think if I selected... I'm not entirely sure, but my guess would be because there was a RAM option, that would be fully live. And that this may be with persistence. So I'm going to select English there, and then I'm going to hit next, and I want US English, so next. And I'm going to select Computer Standard Enlightenment and not tiling. I think if you selected tiling here, you would get a more of a tiling manager setup or a window manager setup rather than a normal desktop environment. That's my guess. I haven't gone through it. But this was the default, so I left it like that. We are adding missing app files, apparently.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And I'm just going to select the standard sizing here for the titling. And this is an interesting thing. So on window managers, you usually get this set up so that when your mouse enters a window, the focus shifts, and then on Windows, you have to click over to something to change the focus usually. So that's an interesting difference. I'll leave it like this just for purpose of the video, but that's an interesting thing to note. And then after a minute here,
oh, it's trying.
It's gone. Yep, so that's all fine. It's not finding a bunch of stuff because it's not in the ISO. Whatever. We can enable those things. We can enable update checking. And I want a toolbar, and I guess the alternative or not a toolbar, taskbar. The alternative is the iBar launcher. But I didn't want to mess with that, and I just wanted the standard taskbar for this. So just like that, though.
Hey, that's it. That wasn't
We're in a live
too bad.
No, but keep in mind, I don't think we'll have any networking right now. So if I try to ping, no, actually we will because I'm on Ethernet. Nice. Okay, that's good. So if you're on Ethernet, I guess it just works. In my experience, when I tried to run off of Wi-Fi, it didn't work, and I didn't want to deal with it, so I just plugged in Ethernet for this. But
I imagine there's probably like a driver issue where you'd have to install some driver to get it to work.
yeah, that's what I thought too. But for our next step, I'm going to pull up my or the documentation on my other screen here so I know what's going on. But to actually install, you can see Thomas is participating right now.
I can see that, yeah.
Come back later, buddy. But if we do sudo void installer here, which you can't see, so
No,
give
it's
me a
quite
second.
small, yeah.
Yeah, 1 minute. I'll try and go through and make things.
Whoa, the interface is like strange. It like pops up from the side.
Yeah, it's real weird.
And it has a slider for the font? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Is that more visible?
Yeah, very.
Nice. Okay. So if we sudo void installer, then we get a nice installation walkthrough. So our keyboard is going to just be called US here, and if you had a UK variant or some other one, you can select that. But that's our keyboard selection. Network setup. This is my wired adapter, so I'm going to select that one. You could set up your wireless one if you had drivers set up correctly, I guess. When I tried to do that, it didn't work for me. And I want to use DHCP. So that says it's all working properly. Source, you could install off network, but this will probably be faster installing locally, so I'll go with that again. What do you want the host name to be, Cody?
Buckrucker.
How are you spelling that?
B-U-C-K, obviously.
Buck.
Rucker. R-U-C-K-E-R.
Rucker. Got it.
Excellent.
Perfect. Our locale is en_US.
GD? Oh.
I don't know how to explain a locale. Would you?
That's fine. I think that
It's
was
just-
fine.
It's just ENUS is what I always put. And my time zone is London right now, so I'll select that.
It's getting confused.
Root password, you would want to put something secure here and different to the user account, but to keep everything simple in my mind for this video, the passwords are all going to be void.
Nice.
And I'm going to leave the usernames and stuff default. And here it's summarizing the permissions that it's going to give to the user account that it creates. And wheel here basically means you're going to have sudo permissions. So that's all good. I hope I explained that correctly. I think that's what it means. But next, which do you want to install the bootloader on? So here I have SDA and SDB. These are like your physical disks. So I have my internal SSD, which is 120 gigs, and I have my USB drive. So I want to install the bootloader onto the internal SSD.
I mean, whichever. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. If you don't want a bootloader,
This step is just very casual. Just like pick whatever.
if you want a bootloader on your flash drive, yeah.
Yeah.
Install it on your internal drive. But yeah, so I'll keep the graphical interface. Then we have the fun thing, partitioning. And we want to make sure that we partition the correct disk. We're going to use CF disk because I don't know a lot about partitioning. And now I've already set this up, but I'm just going to clear out the existing partitions I've created. You may not have any here, or you may have ones from other operating systems. And this is where you need to be careful. If you're dual booting and you delete the wrong partitions here and you write those changes, your stuff is gone. So be careful.
Yep.
When you delete a partition, basically the stuff that's in there is done. Like you have to write the changes, but after that, there's no going back unless you want to do some fancy disk recovery, and I don't even think you can do that on an SSD. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to create a 500 megabyte by typing 500 big M partition. And we're going to change the type of this to EFI system. So this is going to be our EFI partition.
Got it.
And then we're going to go down to free space, and we're going to create one more partition with our remaining space. And you could create a swap partition here if you have a low amount of system RAM, but I don't, in my case, expect it to be exceeding the system RAM, so I'm not going to do that. But if you expected yourself to do that and you wanted to use virtual disk, then you create a partition here to do that. But we're going to create one more with the remaining space, and that's going to be our Linux file system where everything else is going to go. And then we just need to write those changes. So we hit write, we say yes, and then we are done. So we can use the arrow keys to go quit, get out of there, and then we need to set up the file systems. So as you can see, this is more involved than the other ones. But yeah. So if we go to file systems, and again, we want to go on to SDA1 first, which is our 500 megabyte one.
Mm-hmm.
We want VFAT, FAT32. And let me get this right. So this is our EFI system partition. So we want the mount point to be boot EFI, like so.
Okay, got it. Sure, if you say so.
And then the other one is going to be our root partition. So we want to make this ext4, our system partition, sorry. And just the mount point is just slash. And after that, we are
What's this
done.
last one?
In what, install?
No. Go back. If you can. Yeah, like, where there... oh, wait.
That's SDB. That's SDB. So that's my flash drive.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing there.
It's got 32 megabytes.
It's got one partition on there. I don't know what it is, but...
Weird.
Sure. So yes. Next. Install. And it's going to tell us that it's going to create file systems and that the data on those partitions is going to be destroyed, but we just made those partitions. So in reality, there's no difference in this case, but...
James, let's be very clear here. In all caps, it says the data will be completely destroyed. In red, too.
Yes, but I just made those partitions, so there's nothing on there.
Okay, all right.
But yes, when you're creating partitions, or if you are overwriting existing partitions, you need to be very careful here. And you would definitely want to read through what you're doing. But these are both on the correct drive, and they look correct, so yes.
All right, do it.
And this doesn't actually take that long, in my experience. It's a pretty quick install process. But
well, okay, this definitely doesn't hold your hand as much as some of the other installers that we've done.
But again, on their while that's going, I'll switch back to the my other screen, and I'll zoom in a bit because they do actually tell you what you need to do. So they tell you to run void installer, and they tell you that you need to partition it, and they tell you that you need to create a EFI partition, and then they have a whole other section on partitioning in case that's something you're not used to, like me, so I read through this. And then after you get all that done, you're pretty much good to go. So assuming everything works, this pretty much walks you through it.
Yeah, what got me was the mount points. I'm glad that they mentioned that because, like, I forget what that is all the time.
Yeah, I kind of had, like, completely forgotten, and I was like, but even if you didn't put in mount points, I don't think it would work. The installer didn't work when I messed it up, if I remember correctly. But I'll switch us back because I think the install is now
Oh, cool. Applying installer
nearing
settings.
finish. Yeah, so there we go.
Sweet.
We are ready to reboot. And you're going to get a nice, very green screen. And then my BIOS splash screen. And then we are in Grub. So selecting the top option, we are now booting into Void.
Okay, that's not like unduly difficult. I wouldn't say that this is like so difficult that it would scare people off, but it definitely requires you to read the manual.
Yeah, you definitely have to read the manual, and I think it's probably the hardest one that we've done on here to install, but it's equally very manageable, I think. Okay, sorry, my thing is like freaking out with the sizes because of the capture card. There we go. So again, we're going to do the same settings or the same setup that we did when we were booting into the live USB.
All right, but now because it's installed locally, these settings should be more persistent.
Yeah, they will persist this time. So I'll just go through these quickly. 1.0 tile size, focus like that. And just so you know, I'm not cheating. I unplugged the USB thing, so it booted off the SSD.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
In case there's any doubters in the chat.
I'm sure somebody will accuse us of this. On our last video where we hacked the IoT devices, I spent all this time making like a Python script that would like actually control the lights, and then like someone's just like, "You guys are just flicking the lights on or off." I'm like, how do we show you? Like what will your eyes believe? Because we've already recorded it and you don't believe it.
So now we're going to see if we need to set up networking. Well, I'll make this window bigger, the text bigger first, but we're going to see if we need to set up networking or if it just figures it out because it's Ethernet. And I guess Ethernet drivers are pretty consistent at just working. So, sorry, font. And then nice and big. Void at Buckrucker.
Yes.
Is that sufficiently large, Cody?
It could be bigger.
You want to go all the
way?
way?
Oh, wait. No. Sorry. You mean in the background. I thought you meant in the foreground. No, the background's fine. You're good. Okay.
So I'm just going to ping 1.1.1.1, which is Cloudflare's DNS service, to make sure that we have network, and we do. And I'm going to ping Google to make sure we have DNS, and we do. So at that point, if I open up Firefox, and let's go to Hudator.com, I think. So yeah, we have network. Everything seems to be working. So that was not too bad. Like it was, I feel like it's the worst that we've done here, but I also think that was not too bad.
Well, okay, there are some caveats. Like Wi-Fi isn't going to work right now, right?
Wi-Fi would not work right now, no.
All right, so like this is like up and running, but it's definitely not like set up like the way that you would expect like Ubuntu or some of these other operating systems that like we've shown off would be.
Yeah, exactly. But again, if you're like into that sort of thing, like if you're actually trying to run this as a general operating system, then I feel like you're probably, you have to know what you're doing. Like this isn't going to be the first operating system you use, I feel like, because it's definitely not as easy to use as Ubuntu or something like that. Yeah. But again, in their documentation, there are things about how you would set up wireless networking. So
okay, so the process is documented, but it might not be super straightforward, and you might just have to follow a lot of instructions.
Yes, exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to be lazy, and I'm just going to download the Linux binary for the Hunator. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to go back to our terminal. It lets me. And where are we? So I'm going to cd into downloads because I'm feeling really lazy. And then I'm going to make the Hunator executable and then run it with sudo so it can actually open the serial port. Password void. Take my Andromeda deauthor. Mm-hmm. Plug that in. And we're connected.
Hey, wow. Okay, so like you might not be able to connect to Wi-Fi, but you can install a package that allows you to get started hacking Wi-Fi with a deauthor in less time than a lot of the other operating systems that we've tried, right? Like there were some that like straight up would not allow us to even install this.
Well, I mean, we took the easy way here,
Yeah,
to
of
be
course.
fair.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like if you did it this way, it would work as simply as it did here on most Linux-based operating systems. But compared to OpenBSD, yes, this was easier.
Yeah. Well, and also compared to like I think like just Black Arch, which just immediately threw us errors that caused us to be unable to like install new programs at all.
Yeah, that we tried to update. Should we try updating? That may
Yeah.
actually take too long. So
Well,
we'll avoid
let's just
that,
see
but
what
we'll
it,
do something with the package manager in a minute.
yeah. Let's see
I
what it
think.
would look like anyway.
So let me look. I'm looking at their GitHub for the package manager right now, trying to scan through for the update command. Da, da, da. Why don't I see it? Am I blind? Probably. Let me go check the documentation and switch my screen so it's not just me looking around blindly. So, configuration, the package manager. So, here we go. If you're going to install it, you would do xbps-install-su.
Oh, okay. I remember the SU. That's familiar from Arch.
Yeah, you're correct. That's the same argument system, I guess. So they document the package manager here, and then also on their GitHub, the basic commands are listed here, which is what I was going off before. So what package? Well, we'll go through that a bit. We should mess with the Hunator first, I think. What do you want to actually do?
So let's see if we could do. Do you want to try to create a bunch of fake networks, or do you want to do like a scan for devices or something like that?
Let's do a scan for devices because I think that's easier to demonstrate. Because I don't know how we would show the fake networks other than me holding up my phone to a camera.
So if you do help -S, that should show, and then enter. That should show a short help list, I believe. Yep. So then, oh, interesting. Yeah, there's so many different things you could do. Of course, we have to try this command. Chicken.
Oh, it's too big.
Oh,
The chicken is too large.
It's too glorious to fit on the screen.
Exactly. Okay.
Well, I love to see that bird.
I do. It makes me happy. Right. What were you trying to do?
Let's see. Well, I mean, there's so many things we can do. We can scan. We can beacon out fake networks. We could do deauthentication attacks. What do you want to do? There's so much here.
Let's scan. But what should we scan for, or should we just scan?
Oh, okay. So if we're gonna do a scan, then we're gonna want to select either a client or either clients or APs, or what is it? Let's see. Start scan. So mode is either AP or station. So ST. So it would just be scan-m ST. Although I believe that it's a positional argument, so you can also just put scan ST. Now, one notable thing about this is, oh yeah, there it goes. You won't. I don't think you'll be able to see which networks the stations are connected to, because you haven't run a scan for network or like APs first. But you know that's fine. It just sometimes matters the way that you or the order that you run these scans in. Yeah, see, it claims that there are there's like nothing around you, but that's because, you know, unless you run the initial scan, sometimes it will just do that. I would say, well, yeah, like a general scan would definitely, there you go. So now it's found something, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, look, there's all this stuff connected to the FBI surveillance van. So Mr. FBI would have gotten away with surveilling you, James, if it hadn't been for you running a full scan. So, like, kind of an interesting feature of the Hunator. Again, this is not part of Void Linux. This is like the Hunator interacting with the deauthor. But yeah, if you run a scan for stations before you run a general scan, it won't be able to tell which station is connected to which access point, and often it will just tell you that there's nothing out there. Interesting.
Yeah, and there we go. Now if we scan ST,
it shows up.
Things.
Yeah, it's because I guess it's like queuing the information from the last AP scan, so it's able to like detect the relationship. It's kind of cool.
Okay, so shall we try installing packages, or is there something
Yeah,
else
let's
that
do
we
it.
would? Okay, xbps dash. All right, I'll need to sudo this one. xbps install. What should we try to install? What do you think that there may be? Or are you curious?
ipcalc.
ipcalc.
Yeah, ipcalc.
ipcalc is not found.
Wow, sad. How about nmap?
nmap is not found.
How about oh god. How about aircrack-ng?
Fireshark isn't found. Aircraft MG isn't found.
Okay, so maybe this isn't like such a security focused distro.
Or pen testing, given that there's nothing. What should we? What will there be?
I mean, try Minesweeper.
Wait, xbps query. We can query it. Is there
Ah,
nmap?
yeah.
No.
Just type the letter N.
Oh,
Show
wait,
us every.
I need to pass arguments. List
Oh.
of working repositories. List of packages on hold. I'm reading through documentation.
No.
No. That is what we were supposed to do, I think. Okay. N.
Yeah. Just
No, I'm doing
will it show
something.
us everything? No, I was hoping it would just show us everything that starts with N, but it did it.
So, what do you think we need to query a package?
Nano. Install Nano. Install V.
Install V. I think I tried installing Nano and it didn't work.
What? Okay.
Yeah, I was pretty. Maybe that was because I didn't have internet. Let's try it. So. Nano. Nano not found in the repository.
Try V.
Cool.
Well, no, VI. Yeah. What? What?
We're doing something. We're doing
Try
something wrong.
Emacs.
We're doing something wrong.
Okay.
Should we try?
Yeah,
Should we try updating?
yeah, try updating.
How do we do that again? I forgot. Sudo xbps install -su the xbps.
All right. Things have
All
happened.
right, we're getting somewhere.
Must be updated.
Yeah, I think that we didn't like have the package manager correctly installed or something.
Cool.
Okay, we're gonna do a gigabyte update, I guess. So that's gonna take a minute.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we're already 10% of the way through this small portioned corner of the process, so that's good.
Come on, 10-year-old laptop. Let's go.
Got some RSA signatures going on. Hey, we're already 30% done. That's great.
Sure.
You never know. It could happen fast.
It could, maybe. In the meantime,
it's because they got rid of all that bloatware, right? No
Yeah,
more
they got rid of all
system
the-
D to have to update.
exactly. None of that stuff that you just
Okay.
don't need.
All right. Well, that was 100%, so a little misleading.
It's on extracting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they just should have managed my expectations with that countdown.
What does all this stuff do?
Oh, at the bottom, that lets you adjust the globe up and down. So that's
The glow of what? My screen is the same
good. No,
brightness.
the globe. See that globe you're dragging? You can drag it higher or lower. You can set it to whatever position makes you most comfortable while you work.
The globe.
Yeah, that you're clicking on right now.
What does it do?
You can raise or lower the position to reduce your stress.
Just like as a fidget thing?
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, it's great.
I've wanted nothing more. It's
And
changing
look,
nothing.
no, at the bottom, it actually changes how the icon looks. So go ahead and bring it down.
Ooh.
Night mode.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's 60C apparently. Is that my CPU or something?
It seems a little hot for your house.
I'm sitting here just cooking.
I would
Okay.
hope so. Hey,
That-
good job,
that works.
Buckrucker. You installed 99 downloads.
So now, can we install Nano? We can. Wow.
Wow. Okay. Well, that makes me just wonder if we could have installed all those other stupid packages too.
We can get Wireshark.
Wow. All right.
Let's
Well,
get
clearly
Wireshark.
we misjudged this operating system for not being
We
security focused.
Aircrack.
Yeah, Aircrack NG. Can we do password cracking in this? Did they care about it?
We
Yes.
got Aircrack.
That's
Nice.
beautiful.
Okay. What
Okay.
else?
Better cap. Are they edgy?
They're edgy.
Whoa. What? Why did they have better cap in their repo? Okay, cool. I'm suitably impressed.
What was the first one you asked for that we thought didn't work?
Oh, Nmap, but who cares about that? Just do Airgeddon, AIRGEDDON.
Oh, I'll be very impressed if they have that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Impress me.
No.
Okay, we found its limits. Good. This is I needed to get here in order to,
Okay.
to feel satisfied.
So it's not like Arch or Kali, but it's
Black Arch.
not like Black Arch or Kali, but it's got a lot of security tools for being a general purpose operating system. It looks like.
Yeah, networking tools. Like it seems like it's fairly well rounded. And if you wanted to install from like GitHub or whatever, it doesn't seem like it would be like tremendously difficult to do so.
Install the package manager, you mean?
No, to install one of these tools, like maybe like Airgeddon
yeah.
or something.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right.
Okay, I can't execute Wireshark.
Nice. Try just doing a search for the program now that it's installed. Like through the GUI. What?
Through the GUI. I don't know. I don't know how to do that, man.
Okay. There's no just like what happens if you press the Windows key?
Applications. Windows settings.
What are you doing? No.
Nothing happens if I press.
I don't believe you. Do it again.
Pressing it.
Press it and then the spacebar. There's no like search. Oh wait, is there a search down at the? No. Okay. Well, I'm disappointed.
We're probably missing something. There's probably some.
I'm sure.
In fact, I think with this desktop environment, there's some system where you can type in application names and it will search them and find them. But I don't know which one of those we're using, so I don't actually know which.
Just one run of those Wiresharks, huh? Do it. User library Wireshark. Go. What? Super lame. I like that it gives. What is that? Anytime you type something wrong, it looks like you got shot in a video game, like on the lower right side.
It's a little intense.
I actually really super like it. It looks like you're like losing hit points like every time you make a mistake.
It's like okay, but even if you like backspace one too far, it's like whoa, watch out.
Is it like a little traffic cone that spins into like nothing after like the animation?
Yeah. Look.
Is that seriously what it is? No, it's an hourglass, or is that a traffic cone? What is it?
It's just like a spinning light sort of thing. It looks like.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna have to get to the bottom of this. I feel like you're not investigating this properly, but sure.
Okay, so and map works. I don't know why Wireshark didn't want to work. Better cap looks like it would work if I sudoed it. Yeah. So it seems like most things work. I don't know why Wireshark doesn't want to work.
Oh, try sudoing it. Oh no, I mean like sudo like running Wireshark.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why it's not working. Probably my lack of Linux knowledge here, but.
Interesting. Yeah, anytime this happens, I just run it through via the GUI and like it seems to work. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to offer you that option.
Yeah, with the Enlightenment desktop environment, I'm not entirely sure how to do that.
Well, still, like I think that it seems like we could get some of the programs up and running. And the problem with getting Wireshark isn't that Wireshark isn't installed; it's just we don't know how to launch it.
Yeah, we're a bit silly, to be honest with you. Apparently, it would seem. But another thing we should mention is we also have other like what do you call them, workspaces or desktops, whatever you want to call them, so you can click between these.
Handy, useful.
which is nice for a general purpose operating system.
Yeah.
But overall, this looks like pretty interesting because the fact that it's rolling release and it seems pretty lightweight makes it kind of feel similar to Arch, but then it doesn't have systemd, and it's definitely not Arch because it's a completely separate branch. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Cody? What else do you want to do?
Well, I think that we've like gone through most of the basic things. We've installed it. We have made it like more or less persistent. No, it is persistent now because it's installed on your SSD. We have gone through and installed the Hunator, of course, so we can use the dauthor project. We have then installed a bunch of tools through the package manager and we've ran them. Like that's pretty much what we do for most of these. I think that we're pretty done unless you can think of anything unique or specific to Void Linux that we should check out.
No, I mean I'll flick back to the website quickly, where they have a bunch of information. But I think that we've looked at like most of what they talk about here and talked about most about what they talk about.
Yeah, so I think that that's well. How would you I guess rate this distribution then against the other ones that we have installed and tested?
For security, I really can't talk about that very much again because like the main differentiating factor here seems to be that it's not using systemd. Like that's the one sort of unique standpoint that this has, and I don't know enough about the sort of positives and negatives of that to fully evaluate that aspect. But it's definitely something different, and it's pretty unique that it comes out of the box with that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing to note is also there were some CVEs around systemd. Most of them were denial of service attacks. It's not as though it was like incredibly serious, but still there are some people who argue against bloatware or argue against some of these projects that are meant to provide standardization but end up also creating a bunch of dependencies that you might not be using. So if you want to go with an operating system that is unique in this fashion and maybe has a couple different quirks, like being a little bit more difficult to set up than some of the other operating systems we've showed off, and also offering a I would say not very well like warning lit, ways of potentially overwriting the wrong partition. Then again, that's also like a function of you installing it the way that we did it here because it wasn't playing nicely on the virtual machine. If we were installing it on a virtual machine, it probably would have been no more or less difficult to set up in terms of disk partitioning and the risk of selecting the wrong one than some of our other ones. Although I feel like some of our other operating systems we tried did give you a little bit more warning. Up until the point that it had all caps in red. I did like that part. That part I thought was great.
Yeah, it's definitely not for your first Linux operating system if you've never messed with Linux before. And yeah, you could mess things up if you have other operating systems installed or other data you care about and you're trying to install this. But at the same time, I feel like their documentation is comprehensive enough that for being such a project that's so separate from the other operating systems that seem to have like, maybe I'm completely missing something here because it is pretty high rated on DistroWatch, right? So maybe I'm just living under a rock that I haven't heard about this, but it seems like a pretty small operating system. And the fact that it's on its sort of own branch of Linux and it doesn't have, to my knowledge, a lot of corporate support is pretty unique. So I'm impressed that their documentation is as good as it is.
Yeah, and also I can also see that apparently systemd is like kind of a controversial thing in the Linux and open source community for some people. So yeah, if that's something you care about and you want something that is kind of doing a different approach from the ground up, then hey, this could be a project that's very interesting to you. If you just want like a super fun, lightweight operating system to try out and hack around with, there's other ones as well. Like there's nothing wrong with this one per se. It's just like things might not work necessarily the same way you expect them to work, and you're going to have to do some digging. And being a niche operating system that doesn't have as large of a user base as many other ones, you're not going to find the same documentation you find on Ubuntu or even Kali, frankly. For problems that you run into, like how do I run Wireshark in Void Linux? Again, some of these are probably just like Linux things that going between operating systems you start to pick up. But if you're a new Linux user, or if you're not super experienced, or if you've only been maybe in one type of Linux environment before, then some of these errors might be a little bit confusing and discouraging when you're trying to run something like Void Linux and it's just like not running the program, and you got to spend some time figuring out why that's happening. So.
Yeah, for sure. Like, again, I feel like the main use case for this, from what I've seen, is if you don't want to use systemd,
Yeah.
but you still want to use like Linux, then I feel like this is something that you may be interested in looking at. But for that, you obviously need to establish that you don't want to use systemd. And then you can look at the rest of the operating system. But I don't really see, like, in terms of it being a general purpose operating system, like for security, I don't see anything super directly related to security that would make you want to use this, apart from possibly systemd. But again, I don't know enough about that to talk about it really.
Yeah, so if you're going up against an adversary that's well known for exploiting systemd, void Linux, your operating system of choice. But for like every other possible conceivable like instance that like you're just a beginner trying to get started with this, like, yeah, it's probably maybe not going to be your first choice, but still an interesting choice. And we really appreciate the suggestion that we check this one out because, again, we like to listen to people's ideas and check out different operating systems when we find them. So this has been a fun little adventure into a unique operating system that, yeah, gives us the ability to try something new and maybe see if it's better. Is this better for security? Probably not, but hey, you can do better cap on it pretty much right out of the box, so that's pretty cool to me.
And it's definitely like, besides it maybe not being the best for most people's use case, it's definitely an interesting. It's an interesting distro compared to a lot of the other ones you looked at. Like, it's not just another operating system based on Debian. It's different.
Yeah,
which is nice.
exactly. I mean, it's no Temple OS, and I will say the gaming selection in Void Linux. I am unequivocally giving that a 1 out of 10. Then again, we didn't check Minesweeper, we didn't check some of these other things that might already been on there, but frankly, I am hideously disappointed by the amount of hardcore gaming available out of the box. Maybe I'm spoiled by Temple OS. In fact, I'm almost sure that I'm spoiled by Temple OS's just absolutely sick and unique games that you can't get anywhere else. So I have to say, this one, it's not written in Holy See, and it doesn't have a lot of great games, so, it's okay. But I would really like to, whip ass in that car simulation, or watch James fly around in a circle.
That racing sim
I have never seen someone drift on square tires like that in my life.
I had so much fun with that.
Yeah. Woo. So, okay, sorry, we're getting back to Temple OS. It's a totally different thing. And I still I haven't got my Temple OS shirt yet, but I should be getting a Temple OS shirt pretty soon, and I'm going to wear it on lots of streams. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, James, very much for showing us Void OS. If you guys have any questions about Void OS, feel free to ask them on the YouTube channel. You can find that on hackingwithfriends.com or by going to Security Forward, that's Security FWD on YouTube. If you're one of the developers, please feel free to comment, reach out to us, let us know if you hated this. Plenty of other developers have, and they've even been in the premiere. So if you've also been in the chat telling us that everything we're doing is wrong, then we respect your beautiful creation. It's certainly more intensive than anything that we've done. So yeah, thank you so much for checking out the broadcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And if you want to catch more, you can also check out Killian's show over on the Varonis brand channel, where he does the threat update, which is when he goes through all the threats that real companies are up against and how they are responding to them. And if you want to watch me get nervous doing live demos, you can also check out the Varonis Attack Labs. These are for IT people or other people that work at businesses that want to learn about how easy it is for people like me to break into where you work. So I basically get to do these really fun demos where I show off from a technical perspective what it's like for an attacker to do something like break into your office Wi-Fi and deploy a bunch of ransomware. But I've also seen these sorts of techniques being used for espionage and all sorts of other things. So it's an interesting way of learning a little bit more in depth about some of the attacks that we do on the show. So thank you guys. See you next time. Bye.